Welcome to another episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast, your go-to source for the latest in industry trends and strategies to help you level up your M&A practice. I am your host, Nick Olsen, Managing Director of Cornerstone International Alliance, the only international alliance of M&A firms who focus on the lower middle market. Here we bring in masterminds who are experienced, knowledgeable, and gracious enough to share how they have succeeded in the world of M&A. Today's guest I'm very excited about. He has over 25 years in the financing experience. He is the founder of Lion's Eye Coaching. He's a certified financial planner and a distinguished coach. Former director of Merrill Lynch, where he managed over 17 billion in assets. He now teaches people to master the art of word of mouth marketing and helps them develop strategies to grow expansive success. And he's joining us today to help us determine who are the influencers in your lives. Please welcome Joe Blackburn. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, Nick, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk and get to know everyone in your circle and everything. And
appreciate you joining today. Really excited for the conversation because it's we got connected. I'm like, this is a unique topic that people don't think about, and I think it's very relevant, especially in the world of M&A. And so let's set the table for today's discussion. Tell us about your company and the work that you currently are doing.
So we operate off two platforms. We primarily help what I would call professionals, so an M&A advisor, a financial advisor, an accountant, a CPA, attorney, realtor, anyone that has a professional skill, or some entrepreneurs, but mostly people with professional skills. We help them to really master the art of word of mouth marketing, meaning getting a flywheel going around their connections without being pushy and salesy and running a professional business. We also have a mastermind that meets every 4 months. We just got back from St. Louis, Missouri. We had that over the weekend. Unfortunately, the Cardinals split what we saw with the Rockies, which was embarrassing. But had a good group for our summer in person. Really focused on their pillars in their business, their big hitters, their influencers, and going deep into what I would call probably the biggest levers in any business for a professional service.
Yeah, you mentioned the word pillars. That's obviously a big component of today's discussion. Tell us what you mean by pillars.
Well, I had the fortune or misfortune of building a financial services business through 01, 02, and then through 08 and 09, and then ascended and held every job at Merrill Lynch and became a director and everything. But what happened in those time periods is when things got really, drastic in the markets, we started realizing that there were certain clients we wanted and there were certain clients we didn't. So we put together a definition, and quite frankly, I didn't call it pillars then. We just had ideal client and everything, but it's evolved. I've built 4 businesses now using the same premise with no social media or ads or anything, but we are starting to do some ads, which is kind of weird. But anyway, what a pillar is, it's your, what you would consider your ideal client from a revenue standpoint. And the P in pillars is they pay you ideally, meaning this is where I would, my wheelhouse, or where I would make the most revenue for what we provide and be able to provide great service. I mean, it's not just one-sided. So that's pay you ideally. And then, we focus on that word of mouth. So part of getting that going is asking for an introduction properly. In the old days, it'd be like, who do you know? Right? Like, who do you know? Give me 3 names, like all my friends that came up the same way I did. It was that training, like, give me a list of who you know. But the problem with that was, you're giving the client work then. Like, they have to think of who it is, how to introduce them. I mean, so we made it easy in our teaching people how to properly ask for an introduction, how to actually source a name and get introduced. So that would be the I in pillar, so P and I. And then if you're going to provide great service and work side by side with people, especially through hard times like in 08, 09, you want to like each other. So one of our criteria for, a pillar of your business there's a likability. We like them, they like us, we like to spend time together. And then really important is listening. So that'd be your next L. So if I'm listening to you as my advisor, whether you're my M&A advisor, you're my financial advisor, you're my attorney, you're my CPA, me not arguing back everything that you recommend or, complaining about price or whatever it is, it's more of that client that just, hey, we really want to get this done. This is our objective. It's your job to help us get there. They're a good listener. And then last would be R, and we call those unsolicited referrals. So if you do all those things well and you provide great service, you will eventually get unsolicited referrals, meaning I didn't have any cost of acquisition. I didn't ask for an introduction. It's when you saw the problem that I saw for you and someone else, you immediately thought of us in a nanosecond and made that referral to us. And if you notice, there's no A in my pillars because, like I said, in the 08, 09, I don't allow any A-holes. I don't want to deal with them when times are tough. And, there's a little bit of a difference between a client maybe losing their cool or asking you questions than being an a-hole. And what I mean by a-hole is that's how they interact with people all the time. They don't treat them well. They mistreat the staff. They're constantly questioning what we do. I just don't deal with them. And I would tell you, it's game changer. When you eliminate those from your business, it's way better, way faster, way more enjoyable, and your team has better culture. So that's what a pillar is. So we build our business out around those clients and their connections and everyone that that they know. And really, it's about providing them with great service. It used to be a long time ago, we'd say Ritz-Carlton with FedEx efficiency. So I get the white glove with a lot of speed, and speed's a currency today. No matter what field you're in as a professional, our attention span and our demand because of technology is like, I needed that yesterday. So that's a really critical component to building the business. But I feel you can build a really strong business on pillars. It's what we teach initially to get the foundation. And then if you want to build out your team or recruit or acquire other businesses, or even if you're getting close to selling your business, we can help with that. And most of that's delivered through our mastermind.
Excuse me. Yeah. Appreciate the explanation on that, because you're speaking, from the M&A advisor perspective, that's definitely going to hit home. And at Cornerstone International Alliance, we do these mastermind discussions like you did this, you do quarterly, very similar. But we always talk about, we're now being more choosy, so you want to work with, like you said, the no a-hole rule. You want to work with good people. You want to work with people, the people that, you like one another, because that makes your job and their lives a lot easier, especially when you're focusing on a business owner and you're working together for, 6, 9, 12 months, and probably the biggest financial transaction in their life. So liking each other is important. So having, that upfront to know that, hey, I can work side by side for this person for a year if need be.
Yeah.
And then once you, like I said, the referrals are huge in our business. And we're talking today about, referral sources, or how you coin it, mostly influencers. And influencers are, the common people that you would in our business think of who can influence, your business and your referrals and your clientele. But there's also some that you might not think of that we want to dive into today as well. But, you talk about overcoming professional skepticism to provide value to each other with these influencers. Do you want to explain that and what that means?
Sure. Well, my experience has been this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but over the years, we would find when another professional or old school center of influence or influencer, however you want to refer to them, would become involved in the interaction with the client, that, we were naturally skeptical. They were skeptical, meaning I wasn't a CPA, but when I saw what they were recommending, I'm like, nah, that's not right. And, we would recommend something along the estate, or to do something along tax harvest, or for the business, EBITDA, whatever it was we were talking about. There just seems to be this natural, if it's not me, it's not the right thing. And I think I know what everyone else should do. And part of that is I think ego and authority. But I just think I've seen it for 25 years. There's just that natural inclination to doubt the other person. And so the way that you overcome that, number one, is by getting to know that other person. If you're just clinical or you don't even know them, your advice to your client that you have in common is coming out of a black box. And, we've got some new tools that help with that, whether it's your social media presence or your case studies or whatever it is, you can help bolster that. But it's, in my mind, it's still eyeball to eyeball, getting to know that other person on that level and not trying to get something from them, but actually get to know them. And that really helps. And you can, if you're going to interact. So for instance, if you were requiring information from one of your influencers, or they required it from you, do you do it competently? Is your team aware of it? Is it really treated with white glove service? I mean, you're going to be judged on how big of a pain in the butt you are to deal with. So there's like those two factors of, A, I have to get to know them on a personal level, and B, we have to be effective and efficient in what we deliver. That will help overcome that. And the more reps you get in doing that, the less resistance you're going to get as you deepen that relationship.
Right, you got to build that trust there. You got to know what they're about, and you got to trust the fact that if you're putting anybody in front of your client, that you know that you're cool with that, and that you're comfortable with how they're going to interact with your client. Because you talked about referrals and word of mouth. That's a huge thing, and that's a way that can go sideways in a hurry if it doesn't go right.
Well, and if you think about it from either perspective, in making an introduction to a client in common, there's mostly downside. There's not a lot of financial upside on either street. So there's a lot of risk involved without a lot of upside. So the trust factor in all spectrums of relationships, the trust has to be very high there. So if you're wanting to create what I would call a ecosystem of influencers, whenever, they have their client has the problem you solve, to instantly think of you, they have to really trust you. And just like in the pillars, we actually tell our clients, treat your influencers as if they're your pillar, even if they're not your client. That means they get the white glove service, they get, the unique gifts, they get the personal touch. You spend time with them, they're invited to your events. I mean, I would even recommend collaborating with them in so you can cross-pollinate your audiences or your clients, so that they get to know you and you get to know them, and you can provide value in that way. So there's a lot of ways to go about it. And if you think about the world today, especially the traditional centers of influencers, they are saturated with people that want something from them. There's strategy after strategy on how to get in front of them and ask them for something. And we teach something called the law of inadvertent sales. So for our people that are in our assassins, we would say approach them on, I don't know if what you do is right for my clients, not what can you give me. And I should probably want to give before I get. Like, law of reciprocity is pretty powerful. So I'm looking for someone that I trust, that I can send the people that I care about to as much as you are, versus me just saying, hey, send me a bunch of referrals. This is who I help.
Right.
So it's really just about being connected and treating them as if they're a person first, and then figuring out if your business is aligned or if your values align. Because I've been in a lot of situations where, especially when you have the trifecta, where you're the advisor, so the M&A advisor, financial advisor, the CPA, and the attorney, because all those have a little bit of conflict on how things go. So that skepticism surfaces there first. And if you can be the person that has the least amount of, I would call it, friction in the relationship, and you can quarterback that and help everyone see everyone's point of view, you'll go way further, especially with the client, who should be the most important part of that equation, by the way, in the center. And that's another thing, is if you are always putting your client first, there's way less resistance.
Yeah. And, when we talk about developing relationships, especially with the influencers in our world, that, start with, you said, provide them the value.
Yeah.
Instead of, if you go right to the ask, you're going to, the walls come up and it's like, well, who's this guy? And if you can, especially with like, attorneys or CPAs or financial advisors, they do what they do great, and M&A advisors have a role as well. And so if you can offer your services to them, whether that be just educational and empowering them, giving them the ability to advise their clients, especially when it comes to the sale of their business, and where they can speak intelligently to give them good advice. That's, I think, a great way to start that relationship. I think that's kind of one of the things that you're kind of talking about is, it's got to be mutually beneficial and valuable to both of you. But, from your perspective, share the value out of the gate.
Yeah. I have a saying, like, connect, don't impress. So I mean, let's get connected first, and then you can be impressed by my work and my accolades. And, I'm a certified financial planner. I think I've had two people, ask me about that in my career. One was the person who paid for me to do it, my boss, 100 years ago. And the other was a professor somewhere that said, I only work with CFPs. I mean, it's not that it's not valuable. It's just that it's not the thing. It's the connectivity. I mean, with all this threat of AI and everything going on in our worlds, I would say you cannot commoditize chemistry, and that goes across the board. So if you have chemistry with a center of influence or influencer, your odds of working together and serving the client together are way higher than if you're arguing with each other or you don't know each other. I mean, it's like any other relationship. The better you know them, the better it's going to be.
Right. Absolutely. And you're in your pillars, you talk about, the introduction, like each other, but then, the unsolicited, part of it is the referrals. And, when you're going into a relationship like this, like you said before, expecting referrals to come from these influencers, I think that, like I said, if you do good work, that's going to organically happen, I would imagine.
Yeah. I think what what tends to happen is because of the way, we operate as humans, we look for a path of least resistance in most cases. And another professional is going to look for the one that's going to sting them the least.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing a great job, you're fast, you provide great service, you're likable, they're going to want to go your route versus anything else. And, they're still going to want to serve their client. Meaning, hygienically, if your product is bad, if you give bad advice or you give bad tax advice or you're terrible at giving legal advice or you can't help them sell their business, it's a given that has to be really good. Like, you should be great at your craft. I'm not saying that. But most people are pretty good at that, and it's super learnable, and it comes with experience and that side of the business, I call it hygiene. Like, yeah, it better be good. A client's going to say, well, I should hope so. I should hope you're great at that part of it, right?
Yep.
Where the difference is going to come in is how that person feels about working with you and your team, and how they feel about you. I mean, they, even like CFPs are supposed to give 3 introductions. I think attorneys are supposed to give 3. CPAs, I don't know what their rules are, and kind of the traditionals. But I know for a fact there is influence given to the one they want to get the business when that happens. They emphasize the one they like the best, the one they think the best. And, the bar or the CFP board sees this video. Sorry, that's the way it goes. It's kind of like our financial advisors weren't supposed to give tax and legal advice. They just did that all day. And we knew it. That's what they did. So it's that likability, that chemistry factor that's going to determine it. And there's essentially you're the product. Whatever your profession is, you have a skill set and you're probably really good at that. However, in the marketplace, you are it. How people connect with you, how people think about you, how you come across, the whole experience of being around in your world is what they're going to gravitate towards. And and they put, so like everyone does this. And for those of you that are, I'm old, I'm 48, used to go to the library and like go and pull a card out and see where a book was. That's how our brains work. So like everybody has a card of you in their mind. And I call it psychic real estate, meaning I take up some space. That card better be that, hey, this person has this problem, we're going here. And it's instantaneous. And that just comes through providing a great relationship and, proficiency in what you do and being authentic in what your motive is with what you're there for. I'm here as much to see if you're a great fit as if you are for me, versus I'm not just here to get something from you. That's being salesy and pushy. Like, if I just want something from you, that's sniffable. Like, you can sniff it through a Zoom screen or whatever platform you're using when people aren't authentic in what they're trying to do. So trying to help people and get to know people should be your motive.
Yeah. So, we talked about CPAs, attorneys, bankers, wealth managers, those are in our world, in a lot of cases in other areas and industries, are those influencers that have a lot of say. They're the trusted advisor to the clients that we're looking for. So those are the regular, the normal, not normal, regular, but the common ones that we're really reaching out to. You and I talking offline about the ones that maybe not so common, or you're not going to think about. And I think this kind of goes back, before you dive into those, I want to hear, which ones you're talking about. But, you're going back to, likability and doing the right thing and not, asking, but offering. You're just being a good person, essentially. And you never know where these influencers are going to come from. So if you have that mentality and just the way you live your life, these influencers that you're going to hit on right now, I think, you're going to, you're not going to know, and then you're just going to go about your business being that kind of good person. I think that's a good way to live your life in general. But you never know who you're going to come across who might be able to refer you a client or form a relationship that can benefit you, down the road. So what are those other influencers that, we should be thinking about too?
Well, I call them non-traditionals. I mean, all of us, everyone who sees this that is in M&A is going to know the traditionals. And yes, that introduction or referral from the top of the heap, the CPA, attorney, advisor, and so on and so forth, carries a lot of weight. 90% of the sales done, and they're probably just going to do whatever they're told to do. I was told to come talk to you. Can you solve this for me? And that still exists. However, that's the reddest ocean there is, and everybody's going there. And what I've seen, especially in the last probably 5 years, that the non-traditional influencers, because of technology, the internet, and everything that's going on there, I know we were talking like an influencer could be some 15-year-old girl dancing on TikTok that has a bunch of likes. That's an influencer technically. I wouldn't take her advice on your M&A transaction, by the way. But what's happening is the authority that used to lie in these, and it's true of all parts of business, the authority in the hierarchy is being diluted because of accessibility. Mm-hmm. So if it used to be only these people had this information, and now what's happening is people's, our attention span is like 3 seconds. I'm basically hopping from idea to idea. So if I see something that speaks to me, that strikes a nerve with me, I'll generally listen to that versus doing my own research or whatever it is. So what I've seen is not only is it just maybe online through podcasts or through influencers that give out advice, and you can see some great marketers that have never done anything, making millions of dollars online, and people are taking their advice. Now, whether that's good or bad, the result is it's being listened to and eyeballs are going there. So there's that. So there's a level of influence. So if you had your own podcast, if you're using your own mechanisms, or something like that, that could be a way to barter influence or to have influence. But the other ones are, we had this weekend, we have a luxury jeweler that referred his financial advisor into our mastermind. They literally sat next to each other, know each other. They're each other's clients, but they've never talked really about how to, an influencer relationship works. And it was like, to me, I'm like, are you kidding me? You guys, I met you through the other one. Like I do what I teach, by the way, because I sourced the financial environment. I was like, you talked about that dude a lot. I'd like to meet him, pretty casually. But what happens is, well, are you thinking if you're thinking about selling your business, you're not confiding or getting advice from your jeweler. You're not.
Typically not.
However, so think about it this way. They have a clientele where if their pillar, the most important person in their business is spending, and I know this for a fact with this person, their ideal, their target is $50,000 in annual transactions in the jewelry store. Well, who's that person? And they have a lot of those. So that person who is a non-traditional knows and is connected to a lot of business owners. And in this case, there was a business that is in the process of getting sold. He knew about it first because he's friends with them. So if what I'm saying is in the non-traditional route, think of those people that have, we call qualifying influencer as we both benefit financially from the same client. Well, if my jeweler sells $50,000 to this person and I give them M&A advice and the client's in the middle, do we both benefit financially? The answer is yes. So they have influence. So if Sam, and his name's Sam, if Sam says, hey, you should go talk to Ryan, which was the other person, a lot of times that person will go talk to Ryan. So it doesn't have to be relegated to what I would call the traditional center of influence, because now my influence is easier to, utilize in the non-traditional sense. So that was a jeweler. Another one that, and I'm sure some of these M&A people that you watch yours or your group or whatever, they may think this is crazy, but I'm going to tell you, and this came true in my own world the other day, barbers, we're all real busy and no one thinks about this one. You're stuck in that chair getting your hair cut. This happened to me the other day. The person who cuts my hair probably knows as much about me as my spouse does, because they spend an hour talking to me and catching up. I've seen them last month. And and guess what? Everyone who goes and spends this, I have like no hair, so it's dumb, but I like the way she does my scalp. So I spend like $60 to go get a haircut, which is stupid, but so does everyone else. So I'm not saying you're going to, go get your haircut and someone's going to be like, hey, would you like to be the M&A advisor for, that's probably unlikely. But keep in mind, if you're good at telling your story and people know you and you spend time with that group that's not being saturated or inundated and hounded for introductions. And we do something called I call it ACAP, but it's a way to actually program into someone's mind what you do. So when they pull your card, it's there. They don't have to think about it. So you should get great at planting the seed of what it is you do and who you help to all these people, because they don't forget what you said. It's just in there. And if it's clear, it's easily retrievable. So my thought on that is, think of all the people you interact with up and down the hierarchy of influence that are unclear on what it is you do. Or you can look at your pillars, your clients, and see who they're connected to in that world. Like, we profile our own clients, obviously, but we would ask them, like, not only list out the traditionals, but who are the non-traditionals? And then we talk about big hitters. Who are the big hitters they may be connected to? Because the world is like really connected now, even though some of us operate in isolation. Like, I do a lot through a screen, but it's easier to be connected. I'm not geographically bound. So my stratosphere is enormous. But think, if you were going to look at, okay, how could I get leverage in my output around connecting with influencers? Go beyond the traditionals and then see who they're connected to. We joke about it. We call it GILF, not GILF, GILF. Google, Insta, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I don't care how old your client is. They're generally on one of those four.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see who they're connected to. So asking for an introduction becomes so much easier. Like, hey, I see, hey, Nick, I saw you're connected to, Joe. It's someone I'd really like to meet. I'd like to just have a quick conversation. What's the best way? Text or email? I promise not to talk business. I just want to get to know them. I'm in the people business. Like, I'm not going to sell them. And when you're in professional services, you can't sell it anyway. It has to be bought. So there's less resistance in that regard. But I think if you expanded who you perceived as an influencer, you would get more opportunities. And especially in lower mid markets. I mean, it's not like the investment banker. When I was at Merrill, I'd have to deal with CAT and ADM and John Deere and all, there's the black wall and all these rules and all this. But I mean, you're talking in that $10 to $100 million market. Those people need, they need the most help. So great, kudos for doing that work. And B, a lot of people know them. So I think you can go beyond that stratosphere of the traditionals and try to build relationships. Just think of it this way. Does this person have a group of people that pay them that could potentially be my ideal clients? Do they have a bunch of business owners? That's what I'd be asking. And if the answer is probabilistically yes, I'd go have coffee with them and talk to them about, and we have a lot of ways to help garner that conversation if you get there without being obnoxious, which is, kind of like I've been rambling on now. I might be becoming obnoxious. But,
no, not at all. But I was going to ask you as you're rambling on and being obnoxious. No, I'm just kidding. That you said ask someone for an introduction and you say, I'm not going to sell them. I'm not going to do that. Like, can you give us an example of how that conversation might go and how you teach your clients how to have that conversation?
Yes. So you can have this conversation with anyone, anywhere at any time. You can throw this down at the drop of a hat. And there's a couple components to this. So number one, anytime I meet someone, and we did this when we met, and everyone does this. Like, where are you from? First thing I'm going to talk to someone about is tell me about your family, because you're going to say I'm from here and these are my family. So that's F. And I think there's an old coach I had 20 years ago that walked me through this. So I'm not reinventing the wheel, but this works. This framework works. Secondly, tell me about your work. That's O, occupation, F-O. So it's called F.O.R.M. So tell me about your work. What do you like to do for fun? Those three things alone will tell me almost everything I need to know about you as a human being. Tell me about your family, where you're from. Tell me about your occupation. What do you like? What do you, give me. And then what do you like to do for fun? Like, do you golf? Do you fish? Do you hunt? Do you go to ball games? Do you go to Cardinals games or whatever? Like, I can get a great idea of how to help you in your world and what you're about and empathize with you if I know those things. Now, the fourth one is M, which is money, which is what, if I'm an M&A advisor, I'm a financial advisor or CPA, money comes down to where can I help you around your money? Because it's all financial, correct? But I don't go directly at that. In commerce, I've noticed this. So it's called a pivot. I don't go at business until they give me an opportunity to pivot and put the business hat on.
Yeah.
But I don't start with, hey, I can help you sell your company. Like if we sat down, or if I was with a CPA, hey, I can help all your clients. Like I'm not going, because what happens? You do this immediately, whether you say it or not, the defenses go up the second I make an outbound type of engagement. But if I listen to you and I get to know you and I'm interested in how you enjoy yourself, where you're from, your family, and all, how's work going? If you then, and it's very natural, start talking about what we would call impact points. They could talk about their business. They may have said that in the occupation part. They could talk about their money. They could talk about the economy. God forbid they bring up politics, because that's the worst topic on the planet and none of them care about you. So don't ever talk about them. Or, like bring up any topic that actually starts to voice their concern. And so then if you give me what it is you're actually concerned about, I may or may not be able to help you, but if what I do is something you need, I then can say, hey, let me put my business hat on. That's something I can help you with, and then pivot into a business conversation. But I don't lead with that. And from an influencer standpoint, where the pivot comes into play is what I do serve your clients, because I don't know. There's a lot of generalists out there, and maybe you do and maybe you don't, right? But don't go in with the premonition that you do exactly what they need, because you don't know, and neither do they. Find out. Like, have the conversation and find out if what they need is what you do, then there's a fit. And that's an easier way to have a business relationship. And it's a lot more fun to have the personal relationship. So we teach how to uncover the impact point and pivot to business without being, what I would call the pushy or cheesy or whatever. You could go online right now and learn. I could give you scripts. I have a freaking book that's been delivered to 5 million people in 115 languages on overcoming objections. If that's all it took, all you have to do is memorize stuff. Like, just memorize that, what you should. If you're especially young in the business, but that's not how the world works. It's built on connection. Like it's all about, how do I make this person feel? And they're asking, does this person get me, and can they really help me? Like, do they empathize with what's going on? And if the answer is yes to both those, your odds go through the roof that there's business to be done, and it should be reciprocal. So we really want them to figure out where that impact point comes in, and then transition or pivot to the business.
Yeah. To make it more organic and natural.
Right. Well, you've been to a networking event where, if you've been going long enough, or you're around the old school members, they see the person coming, they don't want to talk to. Without it, everybody knows that person. Like, that person's like, run. That's because they led with their motive and their product.
Yep.
Versus actually trying to serve the organization and help people. Yeah. Because that person's welcomed with open arms. Mm-hmm. We do a whole thing on networking, and networking is one letter away from not working. And I've seen a lot of not workers, very few really good networkers, but that's the same paradigm of trying to figure out how to serve people without pushing them away.
For sure. And I love one of your sayings you use. It kind of correlates and kind of brings us all full circle, is don't try to impress, but build real relationships. And, that's how that really works.
Yeah.
One other thing I want to hit on, before I forget too, is, and it's very relevant to the, two things. But you talk about, or you mentioned to me, think of me statement, think of me when statement, easy for me to say, right? Think of me when statement. And you kind of hit on that earlier, and I wanted to circle back to that, but is that the card in your brain, like, when something comes up, you immediately think of that person you built that relationship with. Is that what you're referencing?
Well, the think of me when statement is really critical for when you've been given the opportunity in reciprocity. Meaning, if that professional, let's say you and I went to, I'll just give you a hypothetical, or you and I go to lunch, and we have a great lunch. I learn all about you, and you learn about me, and all these, it gels, and we have a great relationship. Just from that, there's a connectivity, and there might be a potential of a future step, right? But what a lot of times happens is it just kind of dies at the end, and it's like, well, if I think, if I have somebody, I'll send them to you, you send them to me. Kind of a reciprocity handshake, correct?
Yep.
Whereas sometimes, and it's not every time, so you may have to work for this, sometimes they'll give you the specific opportunity to tell them how you can help their people or how to get, like at the end of this, you're going to say, how do we get a hold of you? And I'm going to give you my email address or my website because it's the fastest, easiest way. But think of me when is this? It's an actual command to the brain. So I mean, I know I look like a neuroscientist and talk like one. I'm not, but I do study human behavior and how people act, like that's a big part of what we do.
Right.
And throughout history, we all respond to commands. We're taught hierarchy. We're taught, you're schooled. You respond to commands. So I want to leave in their mind a specific command. And the more specific it is, the easier it is for them to get to. So if, let's say I'm M&A, and my ideal client is a HVAC, $10 to $50 million and maybe I'm niche specific, industry specific, it doesn't matter. But the more specific I can be, the better this gets. So if they would say to me, okay, well, how can I help you? Or, how that, that awkward ending, I would say, think of me when anyone in your business that is in the HVAC and they have $10 to $50 million of revenue, and say it that crisp and that specific. Think of me when. And what happens then when they come across that, they actually will think of you. Now, they'll decide if they reach out to you how much they liked you. But they'll have the command. So a think of me when statement is a specific command to the mind, crisp and specific as you can get. Hey, think of me when you got a business owner that really wants to maximize their income. They're very interested in multiplying their wealth, and they don't want to blow their family up in the meantime. Like that's mine. Like if you, think of me when that, hey, you know someone that's hungry for their business that really is into acquisition and multiplying wealth, and that's their thing, and they really care about their family. So that makes that picture clearer in your mind, so you don't have to work for it. Like my philosophy on this whole thing around pillars is if you make people do work, they're not going to do it.
Right.
Like I've got 5 kids and 3 jobs, and like I have everybody's same sob story everyone else has. I'm busy, man. I don't want to sit around and think of stuff. But if you give it to me on a silver platter and make it crisp, it's super easy for my mind to grab it. That's why I like introductions versus asking, who do you know? Well, hell, I got 1,500 people on my phone and I know them kind of. But if you say, hey, I've seen you talk to Greg, or you mentioned Greg, or you're connected to, whomever it is, that's just a client of ours, then I'm going to like put that picture in my mind and I can act on it, and it doesn't take extra work or energy from me. And that's what I want, that's what I'm trying to do, is make it easy. And if, at the end of the day, the more easy I make people's lives, the better they are, in my, they want to be more connected to me because I alleviate what? Pain. And if I'm truly, my motive's to serve them, like I'm not trying to take advantage of you. I'm not trying to market to you and just sell you something. And that's why I like professional services. The great thing about that is you're tied at the hip, man. That stuff better work, right? Like you can't have a bad outcome because everybody suffers. So you have to do a great job versus just selling some product. So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah. I'm as you're talking, I'm correlating this to me and our alliance and all this. If I'm talking to someone who a firm who wants to join or is learning more about our alliance, like what is my think of me when statement? And now that they got the wheels spinning, but you and I both have gone through and worked with a group called Brand Builders Group, and it's always what is the problem you solve, and mine was we did a lot of work on it as isolation, and how we solve that is through connection, and you talked about connection a lot throughout the entire discussion today, and connection is, and it's a people business, and connecting with other people is so important, and how you can leverage these relationships and with influencers and things like that. And I'm thinking about Cornerstone International Alliance is how can I help people is that introduction. I love the way the introduction is, because you can, hey, I know this guy, like reach out to him. Well, it'd be a lot better if you, Joe, introduce me to them, because now you are the mutual connection between us, and that's going to be way more of a fruitful introduction for hopefully a relationship than me just cold calling you because I say I know Joe, and how well do you know, Joe, and so I think that the warm introduction is something that I pride myself on doing for all of my members, especially, for example, one way I'll do it is, they have a business they're selling, and a private equity group is interested in them. I could say, hey, here's their email address, just reach out. But my thought process is, let me make an introduction to them, because I'll obviously they've built some trust in me, and I'm doing my due diligence to make sure that you'd be a good introduction for them, and let's do that, and then the relationship starts off on a better foot.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I think about it.
Well, I mean, think about it this way. If be the influencer you want. So like you have influence too. So be the one you want, you'll get more of those. Like if I'm the client I want, I get more clients like me. So if I do all the, and also the reason an introduction is so powerful is, think of it, the relationship has to go through know, like, and trust. Well, if I introduce you, I've kind of crossed the bridge already. And now it's up to me to regress. If I repel you, then I regress. But if I come from someone that you already know, like, and trust, you automatically by default will give me the know, like, and trust benefit of the doubt. Yep. So I'm way further along than if I just call you up and say, hey, Nick told me to call you. Yeah. Right. I mean, that's done. Now you're like, I don't even know who this is. Like,
you're
now
probably,
I don't
Nick,
know.
Thanks for throwing my name out there, right?
Yeah.
Instead of going the extra step and doing the introduction. Paradigm. Yeah. The last thing I wanted to hit on, Joe, I know I really appreciate your time, but we talk about influencers and the relationships and the introductions and the pillars and all that sort of great stuff, the big hitters, which is great information. How can we work with these influencers? I know you have a list of some tactics that can either start with or work with or enhance the relationships with these influencers. What are some things that you've seen in your world that have worked and recommend that people look at doing to create these relationships?
Well, if you don't have pillars, go back and start a pillars list. Like, who are your start there, and then figure out who they actually use as in their influencer. Like, who's their CPA, who's their attorney. Figure those things out, and then if you're still in contact with them or you're in the middle of a deal or whatever it is, the first thing I would do is a courtesy introduction to that influencer, because they may need something from you. And my experience has been when people need something from me, it's like in the 11th hour. And if we don't know each other, it just causes friction. So the first step is as a courtesy. And we do this with, especially when we're in financial services, your accountant I know is going to call you on the 14th of April and want something, and vice versa. Like, we're going to need something. So let's know each other first. So as a courtesy, introduce yourself. I would then either invite them to coffee or lunch and be real. Like, I want an opportunity to get to know you. I'm not going to talk business. I just want to get to know you. You should go have a social interaction. Now, this is going to cost you in time, right? There's a time cost to it, but it's probably the least expensive hour of your day. Or if you do coffee, it's 20. I like coffees because if it's not going well, after I've finished my cup, I can make an excuse to leave. Like, especially in the beginning, like lunch is an hour. Coffee could be 15 to 20 minutes, or it could be an hour. It's kind of like this podcast, Nick. Like, it could have been 20 minutes. We've extended it because if it wasn't going well, you can end it, right? Like, I have an easy in, easy out. But step one is get to know the influencers of your pillars and offer service to them. That would be step one. Step two is, if you don't have enough pillars or you don't have that availability, is look at your own influencers in your life. Go across your spectrum. You utilize, whether you know it or not, every service that you have is a potential influencer, and they know other people. So it's asking for that introduction there. Then once you get some form of a relationship, like in our pillars client service model, we're doing something every month. There has to be a meaningful touch, meaning you don't call and check in on somebody. That's annoying. Like, if you ever called me and say, I'm just checking in on you, you'd be like, dude, I'm busy. Like, I don't need you to check on me. So you have to, and this is where it gets, I say the art of word of mouth. Notice it wasn't like the regimented system. You have to have a little bit of creativity on what might be valuable to that person at that time. So you have to put some thought into this. There's some sweat equity and mind equity, but you want a meaningful touch. But you could be hosting a client event. You could be doing a podcast. You can touch someone meaningfully one time a month pretty easily if you put your mind to it. I know you can. So I want to provide value to them in a meaningful way at least once a month. We like to do and did client events and things like that. Like I do my in-person mastermind. A lot of that's a lot of fun. Like it's not just us locked in the basement of the Hilton, which we were this weekend, but we also went up on the rooftop and had meals together and did fun stuff and watched the car, like there's an experience. So you want to provide them that same experience. And then, there's something that's pretty valuable out there that often goes neglected. If I'm running, so think of your own business. If my people are happy, am I happier? Like, is my life better when my team's happy and things are going well? Wow, their team. They're the spear. They're the tip of the spear in a lot of instances. We made it a practice around, the different professionals in that world, and now I've expanded on that on what we call the perfect gift. And that could just be thoughtfulness. Like a perfect gift is thoughtful, unique, and useful, or one of the three, or a combo. If it's, this is as old as it gets, but people stop doing it, and I don't know why. Tax time, there better be a survival kit in that CPA's office. And all these professionals, they have a staff, they have a team, and they actually interact with the people that you would like as clients more than that professional does. So the happier you can make them, the more I call it the wow factor. Do nice things for them. Have your staff do nice things for them. It's not expensive. It's not hard. It's providing an experience. And then when you interact with them, and this is critical, treat it as if it's your best client. If they call you, don't be annoyed when they call you in the 11th hour and want something. Provide them the best and fastest and most competent experience you could possibly give them. Because I promise you, if you just do mediocre, they're not going to remember it. If you come through in the clutch, they're going to remember it forever. And that's who they want to deal with when, it's the 11th hour and the stakes are high. And last time I checked, and in all the, I didn't tell you this, but not only have I helped sell businesses in that space that you're in, that 100 to 10 million as an advisor. When I was a director, my horizontal in the Midwest was PSRN, which is Private Sales Referral Network. So 42 boutiques that partner with our advisors underneath our corporate and institutional investment bankers. That was a pretty tense situation all the time. There's always something changing and going on. So all the players involved are a little bit on edge. Make it more palpable and enjoyable, and service their staff, and be great. Be great in what you provide from your professionalism, and they will always come back to you.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Really good advice. And just being the personalization and the connection, the personal touch, I think is huge, and understanding their values and things like that. So I think that's great advice. And just connecting with people on a personal level is always good to do, in my opinion. Joe, really, really appreciate you joining us today and spending some time with me and talking about such a topic that is very important, in my opinion. Obviously, your work, you would agree with me, and it's just a different, unique, and effective in a way of looking at it. And so something we can all learn from. I know that I learned a handful of things, and that's always the objective of these conversations, is to allow our listeners to come away with a couple of takeaways that they can implement in their own lives. And I think you've outlined a host of them here, so really appreciate you joining today. You alluded to it before. Where can our listeners find you? And if they want to work with you or learn more about the great stuff that you got going on, where can they find you?
Well, the easiest and fastest way is at realjoeblackburn.com, and just click on book a call. It's right at the top. And again, I teach the law of inadvertent sales, so you're not going to get sucked into some sales call. If something I do, something you're looking for, and I can help you, I'll let you know. And if not, we'll part as friends.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. Well, definitely check Joe and his great work out. And appreciate y'all listening to this episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast. Help Joe and I out. Like, share, comment, subscribe to this episode, and send it off to anybody who you think could benefit from our conversation here today. You can find all of our episodes at cornerstoneia.com/podcast. Like I said before, hopefully you took a couple of takeaways from our discussion here today. Thank you for listening. Until next time.